Episode 66 of the Habs Culture podcast. My name is Justin Schwartz alongside Liam Baum. And since the last time we spoke, the Montreal Canadiens have amassed 4 wins out of their last 7, so pretty good, putting them at a record of 5-2-2. Who would have thought that in their first 9 games, the Montreal Canadiens would have 5 wins under their belt? But nonetheless, things are looking good as of right now. We'll get into the individuals on the roster and things that we'd like to see a little or players that we'd like to see a little bit more out of, players that are playing better. But as a whole, as a unit, this team is obviously playing pretty well. Since the last time we spoke, they had a win Saturday the 21st against Washington, followed up by a win against Buffalo the Monday night, a loss to New Jersey the Tuesday night on a back-to-back, but then proceeded to win against Columbus the Thursday, win against Winnipeg the Saturday, and then lose last night to the Vegas Golden Knights in the shootout in Vegas. Liam, 5-2-2 record, first 9 games under our belt. What are the initial thoughts, reactions that you have for this team?
Initially last week, we were kind of disappointed with what was happening with the injuries, and I think we were 1-1-1 at the time. So overall, we just weren't super happy and weren't looking very excited for the next upcoming games because we were facing some pretty good teams. But, in this last stretch since we last spoke, the Habs have looked pretty good. Can't argue that they've looked bad at all. Their power play has definitely improved a little bit. The right players are stepping up at the right times. Just some honorable mentions: Caufield, Suzuki, Mike Matheson. That third line again, still working pretty well. Obviously the second line has been struggling a little bit, but overall in the last 7 games, it's looked pretty good. And the Habs are sitting at tied for 5th, I believe, in the NHL right now. So, not something we really expected.
Yeah, and look, I think as Montreal Canadiens fans, and Liam, I want to hear your thoughts right away on this. I think as Montreal Canadiens fans, it's tough to understand because you're under the impression that this team is under a full rebuild, and they're under construction. We'll put it that way. They're building up these pieces and these important blocks to get to the eventual goal, which would ultimately be the Stanley Cup. And we went into this season with, I won't say no expectations, but I'll say expectations that weren't particularly high. And I know that we're 9 games in, so we're not going to overreact. We've overreacted to a ton of stuff so far, but we're not going to overreact to this. But nonetheless, they've won 5 out of their 9 first games, and it almost looks like this team is not going to be, a bottom 5 team in the league. After we mentioned that there weren't going to be many teams that Montreal was going to finish behind, or not many teams that were going to finish ahead of the Montreal Canadiens this season. So I want to know right away, what are your thoughts? Where is this team going? Are we in a rebuild? Are we in a retool now, or a quick turnaround? Is this team ready? And look, I think we could both agree that this team isn't ready to compete, but maybe are they surprising us as a unit and a team that can actually, amass enough games to maybe be in wildcard contention? Am I jumping the gun here, Liam?
Honestly, it's really tough to say. You can argue that, it's the first 10 games of the season. Some teams get off to a better jump than others. Look at the Flyers last season, who won 6 of their first 10 games, were looking really strong, and then ended up losing 18 out of their next 20. So maybe it's just a quick jump out of the gate, and the Canadiens are, a tighter, better chemistry built team than others right now. And, some other teams are still figuring it out, like Pittsburgh. But, it is really hard to see because, you look at the team, and on paper, it's not strong at all. We have our top line, but then after that, it really drops off. And our defense are young. Our goalie situation isn't anything extremely valid. So, right now it just seems like the Canadiens are on pace to have one of those, average seasons, maybe missing out on the playoffs just slightly. But I don't want to overreact too hard. I don't think they're going to stay as a top 5 team in the league. So I don't know. For now, I'm not going to buy too much into it.
No, absolutely. I don't think you can. I don't think it means much necessarily until, because again, teams out of the gate are usually have a little bit more of a hop in their step. They're ready to compete. They're ready to roll. They're healthy for the most part. Look, and we've already seen some injuries add up already, but I don't, and knock on wood that more injuries arise, but I think it's almost inevitable. And as the season continues, unfortunately, guys are going to get a little bit more beat up and are not going to be at 100% to compete every single game. So we'll see over the progression of time, and that's why we're here. That's what we like to follow. I just wanted to talk a little bit about, in the last few games, some of the better players that we've seen. Obviously, Caufield looking absolutely, you know, outstanding, has 10 points in 9 games. So he's over point per game pace right now through 9 games. Followed up by Sean Monahan with 8 and 9. So he's almost at that point per game pace. Nick Suzuki has kind of found his stride. We talked a little bit about how he had a little bit of a slow start, but I think he's starting to readjust to the, not readjust to the NHL level, or readjust to the pace of play that maybe he lost a little bit over the summer. And then, like you said, those third line contributors like Pearson, who's obviously staying atop of our statistics leaderboard, I guess you could say. The guys that we're worried about, in my opinion at least, are obviously Newhook and Slavkovsky. I don't think that second line works whatsoever. I'm surprised that MSL continues to keep it around, but we'll keep that as a topic of conversation in a few minutes. I just wanted to point out Kaiden Guhle and Justin Barron for a second. 2 defensemen. Kaiden Guhle comes back after missing a few games. He comes back, plays 2 games, one against the Jets, one against Vegas. He has 25 minutes against Winnipeg. He plays 26 minutes against Vegas. He is a +4 combined in those 2 games with 2 assists. He's shooting the puck. He looks like a poised decision maker. Liam, where do we stand right now? Obviously, we know that we've drafted a bunch of young defensemen and traded for a bunch of young defensemen in the past, which is going to allow for this defensive core to grow. But do you think that these guys are taking, specifically Guhle in this case, are taking big enough strides to be an elite number 1 at the NHL level?
No doubt. No doubt about it. I saw a stat the other day. It was an advanced stat about defensemen being on the ice and their overall impact. And right now, I don't know how it's measured exactly, but Kaiden Guhle amongst all NHL defensemen ranked number 2, just behind Miro Heiskanen, and was miles ahead of the next defenseman. So maybe he's not the flashiest point getter, but his presence on the ice is it's truly remarkable because he just controls the play so well. And I gotta just mention quickly Justin Barron, who scored in 3 straight games, looking absolutely unreal coming from the minors and getting that chance with Savard out. So them two are looking really good on that middle pair, I believe.
Yeah, and to boot also, right? Like I think Justin Barron, right, he wasn't in the starting lineup to start the season. He was a scratch. And now, obviously, due to injury, like you said, with Savard out and Weidman still being out, he's getting his shot. And he's making the absolute most of his shot. A right shot D-man, which is always valuable. He's getting more and more minutes as we progress. He's showing that he has the ability to put the puck in the back of the net as a defenseman, which is incredibly valuable. So these 2 guys are really showing off their skills. And, once you add the likes of Hudson and Reinbacher, you still have Jordan Harris is so solid, who plays on his offside actually. And then you have Arbor Jacki. Like this team is really moving in the right direction defensively. Now it's a question of if they're going to be able to score enough goals to win games, which they are right now at the moment. But in the future, you want to see a few more talented prospects on the front end who are going to be able to contribute, at elite levels like some of the better players in the league. Because right now we're really, although he's had an insane start in the AHL, Joshua Roy, you want to see a few more guys contribute at that level as well.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, overall though, obviously, like the one thing that scares me the most about this start, obviously the 5 wins is awesome, but I think that we can both agree that the Montreal Canadiens have been outplayed in many of the games that they've won, including the game against Winnipeg, including the game against the Buffalo Sabres last Monday. So although these wins are coming, are we getting bailed out by, we'll transition to the next topic, some amazing goalie play from Jake Allen, who quickly turned it around after a disastrous game 1 in Toronto?
For sure. I mean, Allen's looked absolutely unreal. Every game he's making 35 plus saves and making these unstoppable, just unreal plays to keep us in the game. But, yes, we have been dominated, but just going to the more recent game yesterday against Vegas, the Habs deserve that one. And, I don't think I've seen the Habs put up 40 shots in like 2 years, but unfortunately it didn't come with a win. But Allen's looked great. Montembeault again looks really great. Yeah, I mean, again, we might not deserve to win these games, But at the end of the day, it's not all about puck control. It's about bounces, and sometimes you gotta, lucky to be good, good to be lucky. So
For
that's
sure.
my point of view on that.
And I mean, through 4 games, Jake Allen has a 930 save percentage, 3 wins, and 1 OT loss, which came to Toronto in game one. So he's obviously turned it around. Montembeault is also is statting a 905 save percentage with 2 wins, 1 loss, and 1 OT loss. The other topic here is Caden Primo, who played in 1 game, lost. He lost in that game. He gave
Yeah.
up 4, I believe,
I
4 goals against.
yeah, just jumping in, he arguably got the toughest team to play against. So, you
Correct.
can't really take, too much from that.
Yeah, so he played against New Jersey, lost 5-2. You're looking at a team that's, Jack Hughes, who right now could be the MVP race leader, and then you just have like an absolutely stacked 2 power play units. You give
Yeah.
them power plays, they're going to capitalize undoubtedly. So look, I think like overall, it's a nice little start. Let's see if they can keep up this momentum. Because yeah, you're right. Last night they looked incredible. They went into Vegas. So the time change and everything, and they really did show up for a full 60 minutes plus the overtime, which in the overtime, they gave Vegas way too many chances, especially on that the Eichel penalty shot, and
Yeah.
also a couple 2-on-1, 2-on-0 opportunities. But again, look, if they're staying competitive in these games, then there's not much that we could complain about, especially when we didn't have many expectations to begin with. But moving on, talking about expectations, let's talk about Alex Newhook, the line of Alex Newhook, Uri Slafkovsky, and Josh Anderson. Now, I want to hear what you have to say right off the bat. I'm not even going to say anything. I'm going to let you give your criticism or your thoughts and opinions here, Liam.
Yeah, let's get right into Slavkovsky because I think he's the most interesting player on that line to look out for right now. Obviously hasn't gotten a point since game 1 against the Leafs. Every single time I watch him, he's either turning over the puck, getting knocked off the puck, or just not in the right place, not hustling. It just looks like a disaster when he's on the ice. There's no reason why he should be in the NHL right now. I don't know how after 8 games of the same play, the same laziness, the same mistakes, you still have him on the second line. And once again, he's not getting the shot on the first power play. He's not getting the shot with Caufield or Suzuki, so he really can't show his I'm not going to say like his skill side of the game because he can show that on any line, but he's not in the best position to score like other rookies are. They're put in a better position in terms of lines. Just overall, it's a mess. And once again, there's no reason why he should be in the NHL right now. Newhook, I think his play is pretty interesting. He's been getting a little bit unlucky, yesterday 2 posts. But at least he's skating hard, retrieving pucks, winning battles, and Josh Anderson's playing like Josh Anderson. You can't expect that much from him. But just looking at Slafkovsky individually, it's just not a good scene right now. You can't call him a bust. He's 19. But overall, just no reason to be in the NHL and to not make a change. The problem is there hasn't been a change. He's still playing with the same players that he's been inconsistent with. What's your opinion on
Yeah,
that?
look. My opinion is that every time that he goes out there, I watch him attentively because I'm very curious to see what he brings to the table. Now, I saw in a quote from MSL that he stated that he thought that Uri Slafkovsky in the last 12 months has made some significant progression in his game. I'll agree with him there from one aspect. He touches the puck way more than he ever did last season through 40 games. Now, if that's something that we're going to start glorifying, I guess, then I think we have a little bit of a problem because we're looking at a first overall pick, and we shouldn't be glorifying a first overall pick's ability to touch the puck. Like that's just not something that you should get excited about. But clearly he's a project. Clearly someone they're going to have to work on. And I 100% agree. If you're not going to play him on the top line with Caufield and Suzuki, then send him down to the AHL because it just doesn't make any sense. And the truth is that no matter how much I like Newhook and Josh Anderson as individual players, they aren't players that suit Slafkovsky's game properly. And the truth is that Slafkovsky's fed Josh Anderson on a few occasions where Josh Anderson had the finishing capabilities. Maybe Slafkovsky would have 2 or 3 more added assists to his one assist already on the season. But the truth is that that's not something that we should be banking on because it's not that's not that it's not realistic, but now we're just chucking up a few prayers and hopes that Slavkovsky, if Slavkovsky isn't producing, it's because of his line mates. And the truth is that Slavkovsky as an individual doesn't look all that great to begin with. So
Mhm.
put him in the AHL, put him on the first line, give him 19, 18, 19, 20 minutes a game, first power play. He's obviously a good hockey player. He's obviously capable of playing in the NHL at one point. But if it's going to take a year or two extra, or even 2 or 3 years added on to his already rookie season plus this season also, that's totally fine. There's a lot of guys that take a little bit of a longer route, and that's just naturally how it goes. And sometimes it works out for the better, like a Tage Thompson, and sometimes it doesn't. Maybe like a Byfield. But again, if you have patience with a guy like Byfield and put him in chances, give him, opportunity to succeed, he's gonna start adding up some points. So it's very frustrating right now. It's very, very frustrating. And it's sad to see because a 19-year-old playing in the NHL on one of probably the worst teams in the league on paper doesn't really bode well.
And it's not like he needs to be down there for 40 games. We sent Caufield down to the AHL for what, like 5, 6 games. It's all about confidence at the end of the day. And right now, he has not a single shed of confidence in his body. Every time he gets a puck, it's like he's scared to play. So, you know, I think he'd do really, really well. Just, maybe 4, 5, 6, even 10 games. Like, just put the puck in the net, get a feel for, have that feeling again of scoring a goal and come back to the NHL with a different attitude and a different mindset. So,
And I don't know about you, Liam. The one thing that really bothers me about his game, and maybe it's just how he plays, and that's totally okay. And the truth is that I don't look. He plays such a passive game. He wants the game to come to him. He wants that. He wants to rely on his anticipation and solely on his anticipation. He doesn't want a forecheck unless it's a 100% success rate of retrieving that puck. And that's something that's concerning to me because as an NHL player, you need to understand that getting into those gritty areas, especially as a 6'4", 230-pound player, that's the upside. That's what you bring to the table. That's what you bring to. That's what your game brings to the table.
right.
So it's a little bit frustrating on that end. And then you look at a guy like Joshua, completely different hockey player, drafted 5th round in the 2021 NHL draft. They're taking their time with him though. If you wanted to, if the Montreal Canadiens were so adamant on bringing up talented young forwards right away, Joshua would be playing on this Montreal Canadiens team at this moment. They've had their fair share of injuries already. Or well, fair share. I mean, they lost Kirby Dach. They lost. I don't know. Did they lose anyone else to injury? Am I losing it?
Savard. Well,
Okay, but that's on D. But anyway, so they lost Dach, but then they're taking Yolonen out. They're putting an army up. They're doing a lot. If they wanted to rush Joshua, they'd put him in the lineup. They'd call him up right away. He has 12 points in 7 games in the AHL. That to me is enough to prove. However, it's probably the smart thing to keep him down there for even the entirety of the AHL season, allow him to develop, allow him to adjust to that pace, and then he'll make the jump sooner rather than later at some point down the road. But it seems like they're going with the complete opposite take with Slavkovsky by keeping him in the NHL as a 19-year-old with so-so line mates and not producing at all, but they're like, let's just keep him here because he's our first overall pick. And honestly, I would love for it to work out, but right now it's not working out. And are we going to continue to cling on to the fact that just because he's a first overall pick means he needs to be in the NHL? Because I don't truthfully believe in that, and I don't think you do either.
No, I completely agree. It's just not the right move. And it's not like obviously we're doing well right now, but it's not like the goal is to make the playoffs and win the cup. We don't need that, skill of a first overall pick right now in the lineup. He can slowly develop and make his way back up to the Canadiens and maybe help Laval compete for a playoff spot, which would be super beneficial for him at the end of the day. Because when he's playing meaningful hockey, it's going to show how he is as a skilled player, how he's going to step up at the important times.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't know if we want to move on from that, but just a quick thing to mention here, a little negative to point out in the last few games for the Canadiens is that they continue to be very undisciplined. They're the number one penalized team in the NHL right now, and it's costing them a lot. They're giving up a lot of power play goals, when they're on the penalty kill, and overall it's just not helping the game script and not helping the Canadiens win games or closing out games when they should be closing out games. So, what's your opinion on that?
No, I think that that's a huge problem, and even it continues to be. I mean, maybe not as much in the last few games, but it continues to be penalties in their own zone, in the offensive zone also. So it's like if you're taking a penalty 200 feet away from your own net, then what are you doing? You need to
Hmm.
stay disciplined in those areas, because especially if you're 5-2-2 and you have the most penalty minutes in the league, that's pretty darn impressive, because that means that you're really capitalizing on your limited chances. Because if you're playing a lot of time on the penalty kill, then that just shows that your chances are just even more limited. So I think that that's absolutely an area where they can improve in. And honestly, it's not a category that's particularly difficult to improve in either. You just need to figure it out, and you know not get into too many fights or too many
Score ups.
skirmish. Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. So
Yeah, I mean their penalty kill percentage is only 75%, so maybe that's speaking about their 5-on-5 play
right,
if you look at it that
yeah,
way. So,
it's
I
yeah,
think
it's
it's a
an interesting way
positive.
of looking at it.
Yeah, it's a positive to, they're able to score goals 5-on-5, but, at the same time, if you want to be a good team, you got to stay disciplined.
Absolutely. And just speaking of that, also, I mean, look, like we mentioned Monahan, 8 points in 9 games, and we didn't really bat an eye. That's pretty impressive for a guy playing on that third line. Obviously, granted, top power play, but nonetheless, I mean, he's a guy that we brought in as not a reclamation project, or did I say that right? Reclamation, yeah. But more of kind of just say we'll take you the first round pick and we'll take on his contract. And honestly, we re-signed him to that contract, to a very team friendly contract. And he's putting up points. I think once you get to that trade deadline, and obviously I'm not trying to like overshoot it as a Habs fan, but what's to say that he can't return a first round pick easily, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. So I was just going to ask you that. I've seen a lot of, talk on Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it, that the Habs should re-sign or extend Monahan again, just because he's been such a, you know, relevant player right now, and showed some really good promise. He's only 29. But if you're um uh Hughes, Kent Hughes, and you're offered a first round pick at the deadline, and the Canadians are, sitting in the middle of the pack, you're offered a first round pick for Monahan. Are you taking it?
I'll go. I'll say yes, and I understand that there's a lot of value that goes into a locker room guy who provides some leadership, and on top of it, the sugar on, or sorry, the cherry on top is that he has 8 points in 9 games right now. That's obviously incredible, and he's obviously bringing a lot to this team. But the truth is that, like I mentioned at the top of the show, the Montreal Canadiens, in my opinion, are still in a very, very massive rebuild. Very, very massive. Because and honestly, we saw that flat out when Kirby Dach went out with an injury. There was no versatility at all to replace him at that position. None. The second line took a massive hit, and it kind of just, shot the idea out the window that Newhook and Slavkovsky were going to have good seasons. And when that happens, it just goes to show that your team is not deep enough to make a playoff run despite having potential injuries. So all of that to say is that yes, I do think that Monahan should, if offered a first round pick at this year's deadline, you take it, because the truth is that the Montreal Canadiens, in my opinion, are still at least one exceptional draft away from being a competitive team. So that means a top 5 pick where they hit on the pick, and I'm really emphasizing hit on the pick, and maybe even another draft after that. And I know it sucks to hear as a Habs fan, and me saying that just deteriorates me, because it's like, well, what the hell, are we going to be here for ages? Like, no one
Mm,
wants that. You want to see the Montreal Canadiens play meaningful and competitive games. But I think that they're in a rebuild, and if they're offered a first for Monahan at the deadline, you take it.
yeah.
Especially if they're middle of the pack. Look, if they're first in the division, for some odd reason, then maybe you keep them. But if you're middle of the pack, you take the first.
Yeah. I mean, the truth of the matter is we're two players, a very offensive player and, probably another solid player out of contention. I wouldn't say for even just the Stanley Cup, just the playoffs in general. We're not there yet. We have a good start, but we're not there yet. So again, I'm going to take the same position there. I'm going to say trade Monahan. And at the end of the day, of course, I want the Canadians to win games. But at the same time, when we're scrapping out these overtime wins, it's, of course it's fun to watch. Of course we want the Canadians to win. We're both diehard Habs fans. But we talked about this last year. does this really benefit the Canadians in the future is the question.
Yeah, and I think the simple answer is no. I think this, and you know what, you want to go back on last year, and it genuinely bothered me that people, kept saying, "Oh, look at, you know, what a win. This is such a good team win. Armia did X, Harvey Pinard did Y, Yolonen stepped up and like, okay, I understand from the individual perspective, awesome. Good for those guys, no doubt about that. But you're telling me that you're going to celebrate the extra 5, 6, 7 wins for potentially a 2-pick difference, which could have landed you a Leo Carlson, a Fantilli, or a Connor Bedard. Now, this is all in hindsight, and obviously it's out of our control. But people need to start realizing that there is a lot of value to go around when it comes to actually playing bad hockey. And if the Montreal Canadiens are to capitalize on these picks, which so far we don't know, we're not far removed enough yet from those respective drafts. But if they don't work out, then these are just years wasted at a potential rebuild that are going absolutely nowhere. So yes, I do think that that first round pick could be valuable, especially when we still have that conditional first from the original Monahan deal in 2025 as well.
That's true. I mean, I don't want to be the San Jose Sharks and start this season 0-10 with 5 goals for, but it's
but
it's a
can I
pro
cut you
and
off for a
con.
second?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I agree with you. You don't want to be a fan of a team like that. And the truth is, we were a fan of a team like that 2 years ago when the Habs got Slavkovsky. Montreal was one of the worst teams historically ever. But again, I'm not saying that we didn't get a great draft. That draft wasn't great. The crop of players was not great. Shane Wright hasn't played a game, or he's played a couple games in the NHL. Nemitz hasn't really panned out yet. Slav hasn't done much. Cooley obviously having an immediate impact, and he's maybe the gem of the draft. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the San Jose Sharks are going to go out and get Macklin Celebrini, it seems like, at first overall. I mean, there's a lot of speculation, but if they get a guy like Macklin Celebrini, and now you add that on to their already picked Will Smith, now you're accelerating this rebuild because you're getting such high elite level players and you're hitting on those picks. So, I mean, you don't want to be fans of that team, but does it benefit? Probably.
Just to jump in, San Jose just also sent down Bordeleau. They realized wasn't playing up to the standards they wanted him to, so you sent him down. He was a top pick. What's the harm? They're not doing well. Let him get some confidence in the AHL. I don't see why the Habs can't do that with Slavkovsky.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't really get it. And look, and what continues to bother the hell out of me is that I continue to see before every game the line combinations come out, and I know it's 9 games, and I know you're not going to switch things up right away. But you know what? What has RHP really done on that first line right wing to really cement his position there? He hasn't done much. He's had 4 assists, averaging 14 minutes of ice. Don't get me wrong, not terrible for a guy, or not bad at all for a guy that was drafted in the 7th round, but you have a first overall pick sitting on that second line right wing that is playing with 2 underperforming guys, and you're going to tell me that instead of sending him down to the AHL, before sending him down to the AHL, you're not even going to give him a chance to play with those 2 guys. That to me is crazy.
And you're putting Josh Anderson over him on the power play.
Yeah, and in what world is Josh Anderson a power play player?
No, he's not. I mean, unless he's Alex Chiasson sitting in front of the net for
But that's
10
not his
years,
role.
Exactly, it's not his role. So,
and look, we're sitting here complaining at 5-2-2. I mean, I guess
it
could be worse. But again, I mean, you either want to see a complete commit to the rebuild, or you just want to say we're all in. We're throwing like at the deadline we're acquiring. Because to me, I think there's being that in between team at 15th overall every season, or I guess now the cutoff is 17, 16. It's not a desirable spot because you're really do I compete or do I not compete? Do I acquire at the deadline? Do I not acquire? And it just creates more problems than not. So
do you want to be the Islanders for 5 years, 6 years?
No,
no, exactly. So you sacrifice the wins now and pray for a better future, I guess. But I mean, the wins are coming. You can't complain. Just what's the future going to look like is, the bearing question.
Yep.
Anyways, let's take a look at the upcoming games, maybe the next 3.
Yep. So on Thursday, this coming Thursday, the November 2nd, we are already in November, Liam. November 2nd, the Montreal Canadiens will take on Arizona. So Juraj Slavkovsky, first overall pick, versus Logan Cooley, 3rd overall pick. And then fast forward to Saturday the 4th, the Montreal Canadiens take on Jordan Binnington and the St. Louis Blues, followed by the Tampa Bay Lightning on Tuesday, who are obviously led by Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, Steven Stamkos,
And
Victor Hedman,
Verbeeks.
and Alexandre Barré-Boulet.
No,
So
he's actually looked really good.
yeah, he has.
Um,
And Tampa
yeah,
hasn't really missed a beat since
no,
without Vazzy.
no.
So
Jonas
let's.
Johansson looking really good, really good.
I know you have him in
Um,
fantasy, so I don't want to hear about it.
no,
Um,
Montreal versus Arizona gonna be really fun to watch. They just played Bedard, and they let a touchdown in against them, and the 2 point
and the two
conversion.
point conversion.
So yeah, Cooley versus Slav. Don't see Slav putting in any points. I see Cooley tucking a couple. Um, yeah, I guess let's do some predictions real quick.
Yeah.
So
We'll do our big prediction for Arizona, and then we'll predict the record. Um, for me against Arizona, I think Montreal's going to lose that game. I think Arizona has actually become a really fun team to watch with some legitimate skill on that team. And
so
I think
much
that they're
fun to
just going to
watch.
capitalize. I think they're just going to capitalize on their opportunities. I see Montreal losing this game. I'm going to say 4-1. I'd say 4-1. So I think that they're going to pot four there. I think one's going to come from Keller 100%. And unfortunately, on the power play, I see Sean Dursey tucking one. He just doesn't seem to miss a beat every time he gets the chance to, produce. So that's my prediction there for Thursday night.
Okay, I like that. I think I'm gonna roll the same way with the unfortunate Canadiens loss. Even though they looked really good last game against Vegas, I think Arizona's a very, strong team on the power play, and it seems like the Canadiens are continuing to stay undisciplined. So the Coyotes will take advantage of that. I'm gonna make it a little bit closer. I'm gonna say 4-3 for the
Yeah, that
Coyotes.
sounds good too. And you know what? It. It's just yeah. I don't even know. I don't even know what I was gonna say. I was just gonna say like it's crazy to me that we're at a point in time where as a Montreal Canadiens fan, sometimes it's more fun for me to watch the Arizona Coyotes versus watching the Montreal Canadiens. Like
Yeah.
I would never watch a Coyotes game over Montreal. But what I'm saying is that there's players on Arizona that just excite me, man.
No,
Like
no.
Keller, Schmaltz, Cooley, Dursey. Gunther. I know he's not playing, but Gunther. Like
Yeah.
just it's upsetting.
Liam O'Brien.
Okay, now you're pushing the limit. Anyway, on to St. Okay, so now 2 games before we record next. So Liam, St. Louis, Tampa. What's the record in this week?
I think the Habs are gonna smack around St. Louis. They're really bad, like
Yeah,
really, really bad. Bennington's been actually okay, but St. Louis in general, their defense, really took a plummet in the last season or two. So yeah, Habs beating the Blues, I'd say convincingly here, like 5-2. Um, I'm gonna say a big game from
and
Newhook.
and correct me if I'm wrong, Liam. And maybe you don't know the answer, but I think the last time Yuri Slavkovsky scored a goal, it did come against the St. Louis Blues on the power play in St. Louis. Now I don't
Mm.
know if that's exactly correct, but I'm pretty sure it might be. Before he went out with his injury,
Well,
does he?
hopefully he continues
Does he
his hot streak.
replicate it? I'm asking you. Does he
You know,
replicate?
I
Does he?
I think
Does,
this is the game where the second line pops off.
I said that against Winnipeg, Liam, and it just didn't pan out.
It
But
didn't go well. I mean, maybe he has something to prove against Logan Cooley. Maybe a little chip on his shoulder, but I don't
mm,
know. I don't see it. I'm gonna say they beat St. Louis. Second line pops off, and Josh Anderson scores a goal. Slavkovsky scores a goal. New Hook multi-point game.
oh my God. Okay. Anyway, talk about a bold prediction. And then I'll take a win there also in St. Louis. I think that, like you said, I don't think St. Louis is a very strong team this year, and I think that they're proving that game in and game out. Then against Tampa, I think Montreal loses this game. Not
Yeah,
really, and again, like I know that they've kept pace with some good teams, like specifically Vegas, and
Toronto.
have
Yeah,
yeah, but I don't know. I think like as the season progresses, there's some teams that just know how to continue to get wins and continue to, I say as the season progresses, at that point it'll be game 12. But I think that once Tampa settles in, they're not going to have problem taking us on at home. So,
yeah,
I mean, we're at home. So,
yeah. No, I'm gonna say the same thing here. I think Tampa just has, they still have that fight in them even after all these years of dominance. So I'll say the Habs lose that one, but I think overall, the Habs can show something in these next 3 games. Second line's got something to prove, and the Habs are going to show if they are really maybe not true this season, but maybe if they can continue this, little streak. It's going to be exciting.
absolutely. I mean, I'll say one thing. I think that the month of November will definitely basically tell you where this team is going to end up, because if you start to see a lot, the team start to regress a little bit, that's probably you're seeing what's to come. But if they continue to keep up this pace of wins, right, like 5-2, 5-2-2, then they're probably going to end up middle of the pack somewhere, competing for a playoff spot or a wild card spot, if you will. So this month will definitely be interesting. We'll get it kicked off on the right foot against Arizona at 10 p.m. this coming Thursday. So make sure to tune in, guys. And as usual, thank you guys so much for tuning into the podcast. We greatly appreciate it. And we'll see you guys again next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.